My name is Christian Basel. Years ago, I had an idea. I got myself a TARDIS. Took it to new places, met a lot of new people, took some great pictures, and talked Doctor Who. From Krypton Radio and the creators of the Hanging With web show, this is the legend of the Traveling Tardis. Join me on my latest adventures and become part of the legend.
Whatever else happens, I am the Doctor, whether you like it or not.
Hello, fellow Whovians. Welcome to the Legend of the Traveling TARDIS radio show. My name is Christian Basel. I am the host and creator of this little radio show, and I have a team of panelists with me. Today, the question is, was Colin Baker a bad doctor? You know what? No. I'm going to change that question. This is ridiculous. I'm not even going to ask a question. I'm going to make this Colin Baker was a good doctor. And that should be, I think, respected from my perspective, that he should be acknowledged as a good doctor. He had a very turbulent time when he took on the role, and there's a lot of controversy that went on during his time, the first doctor to have the series go into hiatus and just, well, you know what? I'm going to have help from my friends here on the panel today. So bringing back with me YouTube's Dr. Freedom himself, Brian Burress. Welcome back, Brian.
Hello, everybody. Glad to be here.
Okay. Author Mackenzie Flohr of The Right of Wands.
Hello.
And, of course, artiste Melanie D. Now we'll skip her. Anyway.
I won't hear enough of me.
Don't hear enough of you there. But I've been intrigued, guys, and I just want to throw this out there because for the longest time you hear, and this was spawned on by the article from the Radio Times, and I actually saw the response by Nicola Bryant, how she felt about the article. And every time I hear a Doctor Who poll, he's always fumbling around in the top, or I'm sorry, in the bottom three. And I don't know. Are you guys sick of it just as I am? Brian, I know you've been a Whovian as long as I have. So, I mean, to tell you the truth about what's going on with Colin Baker and how he has seen by the Whovians. Well, first of all, for those of you who may not be familiar with Colin Baker, who's not familiar with Classic Who, he was the Sixth Doctor. He started in a series called The Brothers. I forgot the name of his character. Gosh, forgive me. And he was a real evil guy there. I think Paul Mirany. Yeah, he was on it for a couple of years. Then he plays the Sixth Doctor in the series right after Peter Davison. For some of you who may not be familiar, that if you remember, Peter Capaldi originally showed up in the series The Fires of Pompeii before he became the 12th Doctor, but he's not the first person to do that. A little trivia here. Colin Baker is the first person to not only take on the role of the Doctor after his predecessor, but the first one to shoot the Doctor on an episode, and I forgot which episode there, but Brian, do you remember which episode that was?
Oh, heck, that was Arc of Infinity.
Arc of Infinity, yeah. And the joke was that Colin Baker shot his predecessor so he could take the lead on there. And he was a meanie with that feather in his cap. He was a total meanie. Just totally mean to the Doctor and everybody around him. But it was Commander Maxwell from the Arc of Infinity. But here we are right now. And this is where I take issue about the way that Colin Baker is just tossed into the ashes every time there's a poll, every time there's a discussion. Everybody says, oh, who's your favorite doctors? He just doesn't fumble around in the top area, and I want to make a convincing case to our audience. I think he should be appreciated more than he is now. Brian, what's your take on this? What do you think?
I generally don't rate doctors. Like I said, people always ask me, who's your favorite doctor? I'm like, oh, look, yeah, I started with Tom Baker and all that, and I moved on. But to me, they're just each tenants of this role, and they're playing different aspects of one person. So how can you really say one's better or worse than the other when we're just seeing different sides of what essentially is just one person? So, and also you can't really blame him because it was a really, really rough time for Doctor Who in general. You were going through a bit of what was a ratings crisis. Plus, he got stuck with that hiatus, right in the middle of his tenure. And, they just had to deal with that whole mess. So, you can't blame him for any of that, really. Plus, when he came back into Big Finish, he really, really proved he's got the chops to do it. Just give him the right material. So that's, so I can't really say he's, lower, better, or worse than anybody who's taken on the role.
Melanie, so a little bit more trivia on Colin Baker. He was asked, and I think this is on the grapevine, I'm doing this from memory. He was asked, he was told how long he wanted to be the Doctor, and the longest record at that time was Tom Baker for 7 years, and Colin wanted to push it to hopefully staying 8. He wanted to set the record. He wanted to tilt that. Melanie, why do you think in his case he didn't make it to the 8th year? Why did he just conk out after 3 years?
I'm gonna go with writing. I think I was gonna go with writing because I think, like we do today, we have a tendency of knowing a production inside and out. It's not just what we see on the screen. We know as a viewer, not just as a viewer, but also someone who's a fan or a Whovian, who wrote, who produced, who's the showrunner. Even there's shows now where like you find out, the showrunner has been moved and people go into an uproar. 10, 15 years ago, people didn't even know who that showrunner was.
Right.
So thinking back to like Colin Baker's run as the 6th Doctor, nobody knew any of that kind of stuff. They just knew, I don't like the guy on the screen. And as an actor, you're going to do the best that you're given written wise, but you're also going to do what your director's telling you to do. Those little micro expressions and stuff like that. Yeah, that's all those little things an actor can bring forth. But there's certain times where you can do something 3-4 different ways because the director told you to do it 3-4 different ways. And then the editor, whoever's in there with the director, is going to cut whatever they see and, present it. So I think honestly, to start off with it, I think he could have done better if he had better writing. Mm-hmm. But it's like American football. If the game didn't go the way that you wanted, you're going to either blame two people, the head coach or the quarterback. In this case, the quarterback was Colin Baker. So I think it was a kind of a team effort that didn't do as good as I think as it could have.
What do you think? What do you think is your impression of Colin Baker and being the 6th Doctor? We're just doing the TV series for right now, and
okay.
Your impression about what he did.
I was going to say, well, the TV series or the retcon?
Because Brian was going into Big Finish. I said, wait, we'll get to Big Finish in just a minute. But what do you think of the TV series and Colin Baker taking on the role of the Doctor?
I see what I think. I think I'm not watching it a few times. Get a feeling of what he was going for. In that, yes, he was brash, he was arrogant, he was a jerk, but I think he was vulnerable. The Doctor never really had vulnerability before, and I think that's what they were trying to have, and a little bit more within that character, and that he's lashing out more. I mean, he strangled Perry. That was new. So I think he was trying to be a little bit more complex, just like his coat, but I don't think it translated as well. But I think it didn't translate as well to the masses, but I think that was just amazing. I think it was showing off that the Doctor wasn't this happy-go-lucky or very optimistic or just very kind of person that came in there and it was just a unique take on the character. And I liked the fact that he had for me, the first Doctor that had so many more multifacets that weren't always the bright and happy chipper sides of Time Lordy, Gallifreyan-ness. Well, I want to say humanity, but it doesn't work for him.
Mackenzie, here comes Colin Baker. He's coming up as the 1st Doctor. He's making his appearance, and there is a scene which actually disturbed me when I was a kid there. He strangles Perry. This is the first time ever that I can think of that a companion is getting theirs into the TARDIS. And here's the wacky part about that whole thing, and just for people who may be listening to this and not familiar with Colin Baker's run, his first episode was The Twin Dilemma. Now, before that, he was in the Caves of Androzani for a good 3 minutes, maybe. He just shows up, says his line, and he just sounds like he just sounds egotistical at first, because he's telling Perry, "Oh, that's 3 eyes. You sound like an egotistical young lady." And then she's like, "Are you expecting somebody else?" And I was like, that was my first impression of the Doctor. So, out of all of this, Mackenzie, what was your impression when you first saw the Sixth Doctor and Colin portraying the role?
To be honest, I really liked his Doctor because of the fact that he was so, as they would say back then, abrasive, and that he was kind of arrogant, because I felt in the way, like Melanie was saying, is that the show was trying to humanize him a bit more and showing that he's not just such an alien, that he is actually trying to show actual emotions that would be from a human, especially, acting out in the way you do and strangling Perry. And while you could say that was very out of character for the Doctor, in the same way you could say that it wasn't, because of the fact that he was so emotional at that time. So I really liked him. And what I also loved was when I got to see him actually in person at Gallifrey 1. There was several panels that he was in, and I went there just simply to sit in the panel and just listen to him talk, because I just found I have a lot more appreciation for him now, being older, than I did when I first watched him his first time around.
Brian, when I first saw the strangulation scene, and I thought this was interesting, the scene where he takes Perry and Perry defends herself by some chance pulling out a mirror and flashing in the Doctor's face, and he gets scared. And then I remember the Seventh Doctor telling the Ronnie to look in the mirror into the face of evil. I'm like, so my impression of that was that the Doctor seeing his first impression of his evil side? And I actually thought this was a foreshadowing to the Valyard. Now, I could be totally wrong about this, but I meant like that was the impression between 6 and 7, when 7's telling the Ronnie, look in the mirror, the face of evil, proving to me that you're not evil. And I'm thinking to myself, going back to that regeneration scene where he's completely gone bonkers, and by some Perry thinks to defend herself to pull out a mirror and flash it in his eyes. What do you think about that take? And the first time that a companion's hurt by the Doctor, to tell you the truth, I think.
I put it down to post-regeneration trauma myself. I think what it was is, as we all know, that when the Time Lord changes, it can cause certain imbalances and things going on in the brain. And I think what it was some kind of like, it wasn't necessarily evil. It was kind of a side effect of, his shifting personalities, as a result of, what just happened. So, not necessarily evil, but it does show the fact that he has, the capability to do evil if things, were in a certain light. So, not necessarily Valyard, but maybe just the side effect of post-regenerative trauma. At least that's the way I took it.
Well, I mean, if I'm Perry and I'm being strangled by Colin, I would be taking that mirror and beating him with it on the head or something. I wouldn't be like, "Here, Flash, you're gone," and then that would have been the end of it. But I think I see what they were doing with it in his post-regeneration scene.
Yeah.
But guys, we have a minute left before we go on the hard break. The next question is going to be about what you think about the post-regeneration scene and how Colin Baker handled the situation there.